Hello, this is Tom Britt. West Tennessee PBS is working hard to bring you more local shows and quality PBS programs. And they need your financial help because they don't run commercials, they rely on your support. It's easy to donate. Go to their website, westtnpbs.org, and click on the Donate tab. Your donations to Channel 11 stay local and help WLJT-TV continue their mission to be as local as possible.
I guess I should say thank you. I should say thank you. It's a pleasure to introduce Ted Townsend. And you may notice a little bit of an Irish flair to the meal. And I met Ted on an Irish trip formed by the UT Health Science Center, and it encompassed more than just a health science center. And along the way, curiously and strangely, because we have an Irish meal, if I could have the second picture, this is how I got to know Ted when he was in a cooking class. We took a cooking class of Irish food, and we had a big time in cooking and in a lot of ways. So we appreciate that. Thank you for that slide. Ted is the president and CEO of the Greater Memphis Chamber. He's worked to build a greater Memphis for more than a decade while serving in leadership positions in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors. Prior to becoming president and CEO of the Greater Memphis Chamber in 2022, he served as its Chief Economic Development Officer in 2020 to 2022, leading the Chamber to its best year ever for economic development in 2021. Previously, Ted served as the first ever Chief Economic Development and Government Relations Officer. I can understand why that's the first ever, because that's the first time I've ever seen those words together like that. For his alma mater, the University of Memphis, go Tigers, from 2018 to 2020. He was also, some of you may have known him as, the Deputy Commissioner and Chief Operating Officer for the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development, ECD. So he was in and out of Jackson a lot. And unfortunately for him, he's around Jimmy Eldridge a lot. So Jimmy was bending his ear earlier. Now he was with the ECD from 2011 to 2018. Prior to that, he was co-founder and chief operating officer of the Memphis-based Argentis Pharmaceuticals. Just a little bit about Ted. His favorite Memphis Grizzlies player was and is Zach Randolph, who's retired. His favorite thing to do with guests of the chamber is to take walks in South Main. And I'd like to do that sometime with you, yeah. Favorite thing to do on a day off is play tourist in Memphis. His commute to work time is 5 minutes. Contact Ted Townsend if you're interested to fill your Memphis cup, to reach out and have a conversation that will change the way you view the world through the prism of a region transformed, a greater Memphis. Join me in a warm Jackson Rotary Club welcome for Ted Townsend.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Dr. Kirkland. I love to see the love in this room for you. It's overwhelming. I am truly honored to be here in Jackson. When I was at the state, I had a lot of opportunities to come here and work with the community on a lot of great things. And then when I was at the University of Memphis, I talked to Jimmy about this, and he was so instrumental in getting funding from the state to the Lambeth campus. The first time, actually, the state had actually funded in any significant manner there on the campus. So it was a great tenure. So Dr. Kirkland and I and his lovely wife, Carol, we spent a lot of time on a bus in Ireland. And just as he mentioned before I got up here, you get to know people really well when you're on a bus for a week. And I will never forget that trip. And Ron bent my ear a lot about a project that we had just announced last year in June of '24, and I'll get to that in a moment. But his curiosity was intoxicating, and his enthusiasm to learn more about how we pulled off something truly amazing started all of this. And then he asked me to come here to speak with you all today. So Ron, thank you so much for this opportunity. Very warm welcome. All right, so driving prosperity for all, that is a mantra of ours at the Greater Memphis Chamber. And I wanted to start with who we are as an organization. Many of you may not know that we're one of the oldest institutions in Memphis, Tennessee. We started in 1838, so we're 187 years old, but who's counting? We are completely funded by the private sector. We do not accept any public dollars to do what we do on a daily basis, and that is proactively market our region. And we are the lead economic development organization. And what does that mean? I'll get to that in a moment. But being the fact that we are a private funded organization from business, we are the voice of Memphis business, and we drive that agenda forward. Now, that agenda really has narrowed a focus to a few things: economic development, workforce development, and then business advocacy. So it's hard to see this. I apologize. The font is a little dark there. But how we do economic development is through business attraction primarily. We also serve our existing businesses. And we look to give them the tools necessary to make an informed decision on whether or not to invest in Memphis. We have a pipeline of projects that are currently under management, 41 of those opportunities that we have right now that represent over 15,000 jobs backed by $17.7 billion in private sector capital investment. Now, we want to win all of those. We won't, I will tell you, because we're facing a lot of pressures now, macroeconomically, where there's a lot of indecision and uncertainty. And anytime you have uncertainty in this business, companies are less willing to make a decades or more long commitment investing that much capital without knowing what it will cost to do business. And that is not just true for Memphis. I'm sure Jackson is experiencing some of that. We've seen that nationwide. What we just heard from a publication known as the Southern Business Economic Development Magazine, they are about to publish an article about that very thing, that economic development across the country is really lagging, except for one area, and that is Memphis, Tennessee. So what you see in the bottom there are some of our wins so far this year. We've announced 4 projects that result in 643 net new high-quality jobs that will be created, and $322.6 million in capital investment. And you see some of the logos there. There's only one of those that's an expansion, and that's Hyoesung Haiko. They're a South Korean company that produces the huge, massive transformers. And they have already announced an expansion. I'll get into that in a moment. But one I'm very, very proud of. The other 3 are business attraction. So we recruited these companies. 5C Data, they're a data center that went into the former Fred's headquarters building on Getwell in Memphis. We didn't think that building would ever be occupied ever again, but it is, and it's now generating revenue. Life Science Logistics, obviously Memphis is known as a global logistics capital, so we were proud to get their new investment. And then Silver Hills Bakery. This one is really incredible. They're a Canadian company, family owned, and if you're familiar with Rossville, Tennessee, they're in eastern Fayette County, western Fayette County, I'm sorry. They are going into the former Kellogg's plant there where they made waffles. I don't know if any of you had ever toured that before, but I did tour that when I was at the state. And it was really troubling to see Kellogg pull out of that community. And this is why economic development matters. When Kellogg pulled out of Rossville, it represented a deficit of 40% of the local municipality's revenue. 40%. All of those jobs gone. And every day that facility remained vacant was a day that Rossville suffered with a lack of revenue. So the Greater Memphis Chamber, you're thinking, well, Rossville's not Memphis. Well, we're a regional organization. We cover 9 counties in 3 states, Arkansas and Mississippi included. And we work with all of our partners to try to see that economic development touches all corners of the region that we serve. Rossville has always been a great partner, and Fayette County has always been a great partner. They're strategic to us. We can't land everything in Memphis and Shelby County. We don't want to be that provincial because we have so many incredible assets all over this region. And this was a facility that was ready to be backfilled. So Silver Hills will come in with a new bakery operation, investing $58.5 million in new capital equipment going into that facility. They will create almost 400 jobs. Think about all of those people at Kellogg that lost their jobs, that have food manufacturing experience. Well, they'll have a great opportunity to get reemployed if they need to. And then look at those jobs. That's the average wage, $54,350. That matters to the economy of Rossville and Fayette County. That's why we do what we do. Now, with respect to Hyeosung Hyco, they are investing $58.5 million in their facility and creating 123 new jobs. And this is before a certain letter of intent that they just signed on the day of this announcement with a company called XAI, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But that was a $100 million letter of intent to partner on acquiring Hyeosung Hyco's equipment for XAI's operation. They are already, because of this, they are already planning a major expansion on top of this. That's why economic development matters. So we launched a strategic plan, you'll learn more about that in a moment, called Prosper Memphis 2030, and it really spans a time period of 10 years, from January 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2030. And what do we want Memphis to look like, and our region to look like, at the turn of the calendar on New Year's Eve in 2030? Well, we hope that we will have announced 50,000 high-quality jobs, with 50% of those being held by minorities in our community, with Memphis being the largest metropolitan area in the country with the highest percentage of African Americans. We have to focus on that. We also need those 50,000 jobs created by new advanced industry firms. Why? Because they have high wages. So we need 700 more of those in our community to fuel our economy. And then with respect to what those jobs require, the majority of them require STEM credentials. So we need to be at a level of 20,000 STEM credentials awarded annually. Where are we right now? So far, we've announced over 18,000 jobs. We have 403, that's not 40 plus 3, that's 403 advanced industry firms, and that's 9,723 STEM credentials. So we're on our way, but we have a lot of work to do. This is also part of the work of our chamber. And I can tell you the Jackson Chamber does the same thing. In fact, we were proud to also be a finalist for Chamber of the Year. The Jackson Chamber was in their own category, and we were in ours. But the work of business advocacy is incredibly important. The Greater Memphis Chamber has a transportation committee. It was formed 20 years ago. And for 20 years, that group of business professionals have been advocating for investment in Memphis's logistics infrastructure. One of those targets was perhaps a new bridge across the Mississippi River. That became even more apparent when I-40 cracked. You all remember that? It shut down bridge traffic and barge traffic. And for 6 weeks, that bridge was closed. That is the third busiest trucking corridor in the United States of America, connecting the West Coast with the East Coast. We can't afford 1 hour of that interstate system to be shut down, much less 6 weeks. So it just made it very obvious that we needed redundancy across that great river. And so the Transportation Committee was approached by TDOT, Commissioner and Deputy Governor Butch Ely, who has now since left the administration. But he asked for our help in advocating for the Transportation Modernization Act in the state capitol. And the Greater Memphis Chamber lobbied very fiercely for that legislation to be passed, and it was. Not only was it passed, but the enabling legislation was passed, but the state also allocated billions of dollars to fund back projects all across the state. We pay as we go as a state, but this legislation allows us to modernize much quicker. And so you had a transportation committee advocating for 20 years. You have the perfect conditions set at the state with legislation and funding to fuel major infrastructure projects, and then you had the Infrastructure Act at the federal level. And the Federal Highway Administration came through with a grant opportunity for a bridge replacement program. Boom. All the conditions came together at one time. Now, TDOT applied to that grant, and it didn't score very well. They used a consultant out of Nashville, and it got turned down, in fact, by the Federal Highway Administration in the first round. And so when we heard that, we said, well, can we help out? Because we've got data, we've got interesting narrative that we think we could include and help enhance that application. For instance, in that application, they did not even have Ford Blue Oval City in it, and the impact that that would have on our transportation infrastructure. So we rewrote, the chamber rewrote that application, we resubmitted it, and we won. $393 million from the Federal Highway Administration. That represents the largest infrastructure grant ever received in the state of Tennessee's history. And we're about to celebrate how many years? That's a long time. Not only that, but the state of Tennessee committed $250 million, and the state of Arkansas committed $250 million. And so what we will now have is a brand new Interstate 55 bridge. 55 connects Chicago to New Orleans. It will be a signature bridge, a skyline redefining bridge, cable suspended. It's gorgeous from the renderings that we've seen. But that is the kind of advocacy and work that a chamber does. We focus on winning and getting investment here. A part of that story is also reshaping who we are, our identity as a community and a region. You all know that Memphis has been known as America's distribution center for a lot of reasons. The modalities of transportation, sure, having FedEx headquarters based there. But the Digital Delta really reflects this emergence of Memphis and our region as a U.S. tech hub. We're rich in talent. We actually have the highest percentage of African Americans in IT positions than anywhere else in the United States of America. We want to be infrastructure ready. I just shared an example of that. And we are poised for leadership, not just in AI, but also data and innovation, robotics, electric vehicles. So the Digital Delta is a region transformed. So we have introduced this to the world, and I wanted to share a timeline with you because it has rich texture and context. It all starts in 2020. Memphis was one of 3 cities selected by Brookings to go through their economic indicators lab. And along with Orlando and Indianapolis, we ended up with a dashboard of economic metrics that measure the success or the lack thereof of our economies. We took that and we blended it with 9 other cities in the country to have a cohort that we can compare ourselves to. And Memphis was in the bottom quartile of all of the metrics except for that one in black tech talent. So we created MEM measures. It's a snapshot for how our economy is performing. And in 23, I will tell you that, or 22, our gross regional product, our GDP, if you will, was $96 billion. So we had a lot of work to do. I shared all of this data with Mr. Fred Smith in a presentation, and I had it much like this. And before I even finished the slides, he had flipped through this hard copy 3 times. And he landed on the slide that showed Memphis was #1 in the nation for that black tech talent. And he said, you know what? Not much in my career surprises me anymore, but this is shocking. And I know that FedEx played a role in Memphis's standing here. And so we took that, combined it with the McKinsey report that came out in that year and the Wall Street Journal article that said, look, if you're a tech CEO and you want to diversify your workforce, you need to go where that workforce is. And they said the Southeast is where that workforce is. And we raised our hand and we said, well, we're number one in the Southeast. About that same time, Ford selects the Memphis Regional Megasite for its, at the time, historic investment in our state's economy, $5.6 billion. In 21, we also applied for the EDA grant, Build Back Better. We were a finalist. We didn't win. But the University of Memphis received the prestigious Carnegie R1 designation. So again, building that digital delta in terms of assets, expertise. And in 22, you saw legislation that passed for the entire state requiring computer sciences for high schools. Now, one would think that in today's day and age, high schools would require computer science for their students. We're one of only 6 states in the nation that does. We're trying to get our workforce ready. We unveiled Prosper Memphis 2030, and I took that whole platform, the Digital Delta, all of the marketing assets that Mr. Smith and his son Richard coined, and I went to Microsoft in Redmond, Washington, and I presented to them. It was a code name Project Falcon. We put everything in code names. They also came to Memphis. A lot of people didn't know that. And they said, Ted, we love this information. We wish we had known about it 2 years ago. Before we committed to a 1,500 engineer project, brand new building in downtown Atlanta. Atlanta is second to Memphis in black tech talent. So while that was a false victory, it was validation for us as a community that we had something that we could build. In 23, we launched our economic research group to continue to focus on the analysis of our economy. We submitted for the EDA Tech Hubs designation. We got turned down. They don't see Memphis as a tech hub. And then 2024 hit. Our update to MIM measures came out. We saw some progress there. But in March of 24, we got a call from a startup AI company called XAI. And this was just after the Blue Suede Network had announced that Memphis was going to go from 25% broadband access to 85%. And we began that same conversation with XAI on why they should invest here. And I will tell you, I had partners from economic development that told me, Ted, don't do it. Don't pursue this project. It's just another data center, maybe 30 jobs, and it will take all the power. You shouldn't go for it. We went for it, and we got it. We also had Aon. They're a publicly traded company out of Tulsa, announced their expansion to Memphis, which represents the largest advanced manufacturing announcement in the last decade in Memphis, Tennessee. But I'm going to talk about XAI. Colossus is what they call the world's largest supercomputer. This is what really got Ron's interest. They invested in their first phase $12 billion in the build-out of Colossus 1. They have already committed to expanding that and another 40 to 60 billion in investment. They are already Memphis's second largest taxpayer, and they've been operating 1 year, only behind FedEx, who has been there for 5 decades. This project and the work that the Chamber did to attract them to Memphis, mind you, they did not receive any public incentives, which is why they've become our second largest taxpayer. It was recognized nationally through Business Facilities as the deal of the year. When I was at the state of Tennessee won State of the Year in Economic Development, back to back. That's like national championships. It's because we had multiple deals of the year. And in this last year, in 2024, the Chamber was recognized for Deal of the Year. We were the only chamber to do that. The rest of them that won were state organizations and the projects that they brought to their states. So this is a catalyst. This is a transformational moment for Memphis's economy. And you all will feel it here. I can guarantee it. Continuing on that timeline into present day, we're very proud that UT Health Science Center, based in Memphis, Tennessee, also received the Carnegie R1 designation. And why am I bringing that up? That means that Memphis, Tennessee is one of only 9 cities in the country that has 2 public Carnegie R1 institutions. The rest you would know: Boston, DC, Chicago, major metropolitan areas that have Carnegie R1s, multiples. We now have 2, and we're very proud of that. In March of this year, XAI announced their expansion. They acquired a 1 million square foot facility in addition to their existing operation. They are going to invest $80 million in the world's largest wastewater facility that will save 4 to 5 billion gallons of our aquifer water per year. They've invested nearly $40 million in 2 substations, both 150 megawatts each. They have the largest installation of Tesla Megapacks anywhere in the world at their operation. They have invested in the infrastructure of power in our region. And they put us on the map. And you see that very familiar logo at the bottom. In May of this year, the Memphis Business Journal announced that Google will invest up to $10 billion, it's probably going to be more, in a major data center operation located in West Tennessee. Now, I'll take you back to that bridge announcement. Anybody been on Interstate 55 through Memphis? It's not a pleasant experience, for one. It's not very safe either. But that new bridge, when it's finished in 2030, will literally and physically connect the world's largest supercomputer at XAI to Google in West Memphis, Arkansas. That's economic development. That's the work that the Chamber has done in our region. We partnered with West Memphis and their officials on recruiting Google, and while it's not officially announced yet, it will be soon. But all of this work, we don't do it for the accolades. We do it because our community matters. We do it because we want to bring high-wage jobs here. And so far, the average wage of jobs that we've announced this year, $88,000. That's not just get-by wages, that's family sustainable. That's approaching discretionary income in Memphis, Tennessee, which has a low cost of living. But the work that we do in building our economy is so critically important. We won business facilities, I talked about that. We also won the Community Impact Award for Aon. I mentioned that announcement in 2024. And then most recently, we were named as the Chamber of the Year nationally. There are 1,700 chambers in the country, and we're in category 4, the top category. Jackson was also a finalist in their category, and really commend Kyle Spurgeon and their team for the hard work that they did to get to a finalist. We know what that takes. It's a lot of work. But to be recognized by your peers and voted the Chamber of the Year means that we have been doing the good work, and we're very grateful for that. All right, I've got 3 numbers here. 102.9, that is not a radio station. 659,200, and then 45. Anybody want to guess what those numbers are? I've already told you it's not a radio station. 102.9. That represents the newest gross regional product that we have in Memphis. $102.9 billion. It's the first time in Memphis's history that we have eclipsed $100 billion in gross economic output. The first time. And that does not even include the numbers I shared with you about XAI that happened in 24. So we're talking about over the next 2 years, adding 40 to 60 billion to that number. And what does that mean? It means 45. 45 represents the percentage increase in our gross regional product over the next 2 years. To give you perspective, that's never happened in the United States economy for one location in that span of time. No city has seen 45% increase in their gross regional product in 2 years. And that's where we're heading. The 659,200, those aren't just numbers, those are people. Every one of those numbers represents people in our region that are working now. That number actually represents the highest total in Memphis's history for labor participation. That eclipsed the previous high and historic record in 2019 before the pandemic. So people are participating in our economy in meaningful ways, and that's only going to continue to grow. So I wanted to thank you all for the opportunity to share with you some numbers and stats. I hope it wasn't too heavy on that, but if you get anything out of this, it's to know that chambers matter. And if you're not a member of the Jackson Chamber or the Memphis Chamber, consider it, because we are powerful forces that are driving the nation's economy today. So thank you very much for your time and attention today. How'd I do?
This program you've been watching was made possible through the generous financial support of West Tennessee PBS viewers like you. Please visit westtnpbs.org and make a donation today so that we can continue to make local programs like this possible. Thank you.